Daily time frame trend signals remain bullish. Balance of power bullish here. And the momentum line remains bullish here. So momentum and the trend still bullish. We got a topping tail. Will it be confirmed? What becomes of it? And we'll be watching. Signals have been consistently bullish since the bullish signal showed up there at 52,000. Some pullbacks along the way, but the signals have been consistently bullish. And then we had the breakout, and I told you if we cleared the 77, 78,000 area, that would be very, 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 very bullish. And again, now we've come up to this resistance level, so we'll be watching that there in the weekly time frame there with our linear scaling. Daily signals are bullish, weekly signals are bullish. We'll see what happens at this trend line. Again, in the daily time frame, the momentum line's bullish, the impulse line is bullish, trend signals are still bullish, the cloud is bullish. We've gotten the momentum here with the oscillator back in a positive territory. I told you we could form a larger divergence. It may not be done yet. We'll be watching to see if we clear the linear trend line in the weekly time frame or if we stall at it. But it is a place of resistance to be watching. So again, signals remain bullish in the daily time frame and the weekly time frame as we're hitting resistance. Do we clear it, or do we get a reaction off of it, or do we get a reversal off of it? Watch the linear trend line closely. We went right up to it and we stalled at it. The diversions may or may not be done yet. We'll be watching. Then again, I'm watching the weekly charts closely. We have these divergences. Are they done yet? My guess is we'll probably reach the upper channel line closer to 115 to 122,000, somewhere in there, depending on when we come into contact with it. But we are hitting this trend line. We're hitting this trend line, overthrowing it, and hitting the trend line in the linear, with the linear scaling in the weekly time frame. This is the log scaling here. Watching the RSI and other indicators. Again, do we have something like what we had over here with this divergence that formed in 2021? Again, it may not be done yet. This will likely reach the upper channel line before all is said and done with our log scaling. That's giving us a stochastic at extremes, and again, possible larger diversions right here. We still have, again, the RSI above the 50 level and now above the 70 level. So we'll be watching, do we close getting rejection off of this level with a topping tail and a reversal, or do we clear this level and go on to the next resistance level? Again, we're clearing this level right now to reach that linear trend line. Rejection off the linear trend line, do we push back and close below this trend line from the 2020 low with our log scaling? And again, we have the divergence of indicators. Here it is with the price oscillator. The MACD, though, is moving to a new high. We had a divergence back over here. MACD is moving higher, but we still have one here with the price oscillator. And a lot of other indicators have divergences as well. So we'll be watching the trend line here from the 2021 low. Do we get overthrow it and get rejection? And as we overthrew it, we hit the trend line there from the 2017 peak and the 2021 peaks from with our linear scaling there in the weekly time frame. So again, both trend lines I will be watching closely. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the chart, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. Follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. I don't have any sponsors, just a direct relationship with you. So please take a moment and help out and do what you can. Thank you for your consideration for that. We have in the daily time frame and the weekly time frame, we have these divergences that are developing on indicators. And again, with momentum and things like the RSI, and again, we're going to be watching, do they complete here? Are they done? But we do have these divergences that are still present as we're hitting the linear scaling trend line there in the weekly time frame. You'll see it, watch the video all the way through. For now, signals are still bullish. Weekly signals remain bullish. We're hitting this trend line. Do we clear it? Do we get rejection at it? We'll be watching. Channel as well. I'll be talking more about these trend lines in the video. Our log scaling here, our linear scaling trend lines in the weekly time frame. Now we're hitting that trend line, but there's no signs of distribution yet. We'll see if it shows up. Again, I still think we're going to go up to this upper channel line here eventually. Even if we pull back, I still think we're likely going to this trend line eventually. Channels on the log scaling have really played out very nicely. The last time we hit the trend line here was at the March peak here, and it looks like we're going to try to hit it again. A nice channel down. We have a nice channel up. It's likely we're going to reach this upper boundary. Breaking out, as we did, opens the door now to likely reach this target level. I told you we had to clear this cloud right here and have it flip back to green. It is. Again, the momentum has been bullish with the ribbon. But we are getting a topping tail in the form of a gravestone doji with the 13 count. So it's something worth paying attention to. Does anything become of that? Again, the candlestick's meaningless unless it's confirmed and you get a follow through. Here we got a 9% sell off and we pull back. Do we see something like that? Or we just plow on through the resistance in the linear with the linear scaling there in the weekly time frame to move up immediately towards that upper channel line. We'll see if we get a Fed rally or a Fed sell off tomorrow. We're hitting that linear trend line of resistance in the weekly time frame. Watch the video all the way through and I'll show you some very interesting things. But this is flipping back to bullish, at least for now. We'll see if it can remain that way. I told you that was necessary to go higher. Just blow past the linear trend line and keep going. We stall at it. That's what we're going to be watching right now. I still think you're likely going to reach that log scaling trend line though, and again towards that 115,000. Take our time reaching it as high as 120, 122 or so, depending on if we take our time reaching it into January or late December maybe. It's got a really good shot at peaking in December or January. Recession is likely just a couple of months away. Probably see it in the first or second quarter. My guess is we're going to see it in the first quarter, but likely going to see it in the first or second quarter. Probably going to happen sooner than later, and a whole lot sooner than everybody thinks. People don't even think that we're about to move into recession right now. Video on Sunday on my stock channel about recession. You need to watch that video. I'll link it at the end of this video. Haven't already watched that. First 10 minutes is on the NASDAQ, 10, 12 minutes or so on the NASDAQ. The rest of the video is about to move into recession within months. Likely the first quarter, maybe the second quarter of 2025, but likely the first quarter. Get emergency cuts out of the Fed. Bitcoin will start pricing all of this in. Does it peak at this trend line or we go a little higher? I think it's going to go again towards 115,000, 122,000, that trend line there in the weekly time frame that I've been talking about. If we take our time reaching it, maybe as high as 120 to 122,000. Now I talked about this trend line right here, this red trend line right here, excluding the shadows, and we stalled. I told you there's a divergence right there on the RSI, but I told you it may not be done yet. And again, I told you we could still go higher up to the trend line that we just reached here today, moving to that 108,000 area, and backed off of it here as we're now starting the Wednesday session. But on the Tuesday session, we reached it. That diversion still may not be done yet. We'll be watching. But remember, we bounced off this trend line on the RSI right here. I talked about that. And we got this rebound off the 20-period moving average right there here in the daily time frame. So I'll be watching. Is this thing done? If so, does it give us a pullback? Does it give us a reversal? Or do we just get further consolidation or just plow on through line of resistance and just continue to see continued strength on Bitcoin? But we're still above the 50 level. We bounced off the black trend line here on the RSI. We'll see if we stall out right here, and this is right where this divergence right here, connecting the shadow here and the peak over here, is right where our major trend line is in the weekly time frame with our linear scaling video all the way through, and you'll see that. We've got divergence going on with a lot of indicators here with momentum, but again, it may not be done yet. We'll be watching RSI, we'll be watching momentum, we'll be watching different indicators. That RSI again in the daily time frame. Bitcoin broke out of our triangle here, moved to 100,000 here in the 4-hour time frame, had a quick drop back to key support here, dropping over 11% quickly. And again, I told you I thought that was the breakout and the back test. We formed a a bull flag here. We broke out of that, back tested that. We talked about bouncing off of the 50 and breaking out here, my last update. And now we've come up here. So we'll see if we clear this level. We do have a little divergence that has developed here as price went higher. The RSI did not here in the 4-hour time frame. Again, we might form a brand new larger divergence here before all is said and done, again to that 115 to 122,000 area on Bitcoin. I got a shot at reaching that level. I think more than likely that's going to be the case. It's going to happen here either in December or January. The MACD is rolling over here, so we'll be watching the 4-hour chart. Does it stall? Does it pull back? We got a little bit of a topping tail here, a couple of topping tails here in the 4-hour time frame at that trend line of resistance as well. Be watching for clues. The divergence on the RSI and the MACD the last time around gave us that triangle. Sold off 9%, and then we formed a triangle. We broke out, we back tested. So again, we'll probably see a brand new divergence maybe develop on the MACD here. A larger one on the RSI. We have a little one here. We'll be watching for clues here. Talked about the triangle breaking out and going higher and still reaching the trend line we're reaching right now, the linear trend line in the weekly time frame, and again going higher and reaching the 115,000 area. With the log, I told you with the linear, we can go up to the 107, 108, 109,000 area. We hit 108,000 and we've stalled out. Pring parameter, again, I told you would likely form a larger divergence with Bitcoin. I still think we're likely going to reach that 115,000, 120,000, as high as 122,000. So probably 115 to 122,000. If we reach the trend line immediately in the log scaling, it would be just under 115,000. The longer you take to reach it, the higher the trend line goes. Haven't reached it yet, so hit it in late December. It might be closer to the 115,000 area. If we hit it in January, it'll be closer to that 120,000, just under 120,000 or just over it. 122,000. So I'm watching the trend line on the log scaling very closely. I think you're going to end up reaching that level before all is said and done. I think that could complete a blow off top for Bitcoin. Recession, and Bitcoin will begin to in the recession. And again, nobody thinks we're going to have a recession, and nobody thinks that's possible now that Bitcoin is above 100,000. So again, we'll be watching to see how it unfolds. My signals remain bullish in the weekly time frame and the daily time frame. We'll see if that changes. I want to show you one other thing though, and that is here with the Bitcoin futures, we have the green bars with the oscillator of the MACD. Again, got divergences on indicators that are forming, and again, maybe they're done, maybe they're not. But again, does it give us a reversal at the linear trend line, or does it give us a pullback building momentum to clear that area? Or do we just blow on through it right here and now, and this thing's not done yet, and we just head on up with the Fed or over the holidays on lighter trading volume straight up to that 115 to maybe as high as 122,000 over the next couple of weeks. We'll be watching. But right here, you've got the potential divergence. It may not be done yet. I'll be watching the Bitcoin daily charts here. This is the daily chart with Bitcoin futures. Divergences are forming on indicators. They just may not be done yet. We'll see what happens at the linear trend line there in the weekly time frame. Okay, we just had the Tuesday close for Bitcoin just under an hour ago. We're now beginning the Wednesday session for Bitcoin. Here is the daily chart of Bitcoin, and we rose up to the resistance level that I've been talking about, and we kind of stalled there. The trend line I've been talking about in the linear, on the weekly chart with the linear scaling, and I'll show it to you in just a second. But again, I want to continue to point out that we broke out of the triangle outlined here in black. We broke out and had an immediate back test, and then we back tested after that. We had that push up of 100,000, rose by 5% immediately when we broke out of the triangle, and then we came back. We dropped from that high over 11%, and then we rebounded, got a rally back up to test at a lower high, back tested the triangle, and overthrew it into the apex there, and then we've had this push higher. So the triangle was a continuation pattern. Now we get a topping tail. Again, candlesticks, they've got to be confirmed. They've got to get a follow through to mean anything. So we're going to be looking at this very closely, but it is a gravestone doji. Do we get a sell off surrounding the Fed meeting tomorrow, and then what happens as we move into the holidays and the light trading volume that's going to be associated with that. Right now we're flat as we start as we're in the first hour here of the trading session for Wednesday. For the Tuesday session, we had a rally, but it was given back, and we were pretty much flat for the session. We were up 0.11%, so just over 1/10%, and about 114 bucks or so. And then the Monday session, we were up 1.58%. We had that strong close on Sunday. I talked about that at the time. Saw continued strength into the Monday session when I made the video. And then now we get this topping tail, so we'll be watching to see what becomes of that. Gravestone doji here in the daily time frame. It might mean a pullback. It might mean nothing because, again, candlesticks have to be confirmed. But we are getting the gravestone doji as we're hitting a major trend line of resistance. With the topping tail, the gravestone doji that we got in the daily time frame, we completed on that Tuesday session, we completed a 13 countdown sell signal. It still might get a back-to-back 13 fall by 9 if we go a few more sessions above the bar from 4 bars ago. If the topping tail doesn't start a sell-off, we might get one of these where you get a 13.9, and again, that could either give us a pause with a pullback or a possible reversal. These counts have acted as places where price moved to an extreme and began to get tired. Over here, we formed the 9 count, went a little bit higher, and then had this sell-off. Here we got the 9 count, we got 2 oversold, and we had the rally. 9 count over here, and again, sometimes you get it and you go a little higher. Sometimes you get it, you go a little bit lower. Here, we went a little bit lower. It just marked a counter trend. And then we bottomed shortly after. The 9 count here marked a peak. We went a little bit higher. Over here, right before we hit 52,000, the higher low that set up higher than 49,000 here, we got 9 count here. It marked a pullback just ahead of breaking out to overhead resistance. And then we broke out. And then we back tested. And then we had this surge. And this one marked a pullback. Shows price exhaustion. Now it might give a pullback, it might get a bigger pullback, or it might see a reversal. We are hitting some major resistance. We are getting a topping tail as we're getting this 13 count. We're getting a gravestone doji as we're hitting major resistance. I've talked about the resistance. We could still clear it. We'll be watching. Do we plow on through it, or and get an immediate trend extension? Or does this give us some kind of pullback or maybe a reversal at that trend line of resistance, which I'll show you in just a moment on the weekly chart. But wanted to make you aware of that. Now, we also have a 9 count going with the 13. That's what's set up back over here that just kind of corrected sideways. We have a 13, which now is done. There is a 6 of a 9 with our Wednesday session. So if the 9 count is to complete, there could be no interruptions, which would mean Wednesday would be bar 6 here, Thursday would be bar 7, Friday would be bar 8, and then bar 9 would be Saturday. There can be no interruptions, assuming that it completes. Each bar has to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. If the 13 count just marks a turn, a pullback, or a possible reversal, then we'll see a close below the bar from 4 bars ago. Something worth watching. Does the 9 count complete, or do we stall at resistance there, or do we clear it and again go to that resistance, the next level of resistance near 115,000, which I still think is likely the upper end of the channel. But we may pause as we're hitting the trend line that I'll show you in just a moment. We do have the divergence right here that gave us this little pullback right here of 9%. We corrected sideways with the 13.9. And now we got a potential on the RSI, a larger divergence that's now developing here on the RSI here in the daily time frame. So again, the 13 count could halt the advance for a little while if we start seeing an immediate pullback or a possible reversal. Now, I've been talking about the trend lines in the weekly time frame with the linear scaling right here and with the log scaling. Some people only use linear. As a matter of fact, a good majority of people in the crypto community only use linear scaling. A lot of them just don't use log scaling. I find both useful. I use both. And again, so I've been looking at the trend lines. This one's from 2017. If we exclude the shadow up here, if I connect 2017 to the high at 69,000 there, the 2021 top, it's pointing up to where we're at right now, and we're stalling there. Each time we had a sell-off right here in 2017 and 18, we ended up dropping 86%. Hard to see that though with this linear scaling. Better seen with the log scaling. And then over here, we dropped 55%. Over here, 78.5%. So again, what will happen here? Will it produce a reversal, or will we build momentum and clear this area? If we do clear this area, we can go to about 115,000 or just shy of it. Or if we take our time going to the log scaling weekly trend line, the weekly trend line there in the log scaling trend line in the weekly time frame, which is above this level, we can go take our time. It'd be about 120,000. But if we clear this area, then you have more resistance. But I've been talking about this trend line here for several weeks, and the trend line using the log scaling. So here we are, we're hitting this trend line and we're backing off of it. And if I zoom into the 2021 tops, again, you can see I'm excluding the shadow right here, the shadows, and then again, just touching that 2021 top, and it's pointing to right where we came to right here. So do we get another one of these, or do we overthrow this level, and get a trend extension? But we're getting a 13 count in the daily time frame. We're getting a topping tail in the daily time frame right here. So what kind of candlestick holds? I'm looking for a blow off top a target to be reached. Maybe this is it. My guess is that we're going to go higher and end up reaching the upper channel line in the weekly time frame with the log scaling. But we are hitting the linear trend line right here. So again, we could get a reaction. We could get a small pullback, a bigger pullback before going higher, or it could terminate the rally altogether if that's all she wrote. Start seeing a reversal and signals all turning bearish, validating that. So we'll be watching to see what happens here. But this is a possible area for a blow off top. Again, as I've said, it could be. My guess is we're going to go closer to that 115 to 110, 20,000 area, and it could just be shy of 115 depending on when we come into contact with the trend line. Same thing I said with this trend line, depending on when we come into contact with it. Now, in rising up to the trend line, the linear trend line here in the weekly time frame, we have now reached a peak with this week's high. We broke above that 104,000 area previously, hit 105, and now we're up here at a high at 108,287. That is the high. Currently, at the moment, we're at 106,289. So we're about $2,000 below this trend line, or below the high that was reached during the session that gave us a topping tail in the daily time frame. So just some things to be paying attention to. This trend line here in the weekly time frame with our linear scaling, reaching it, and some sellers were lurking there and price stalled, completing our 13 count in the daily time frame. So the question now is, are we going to clear this area? We're looking at the weekly bar. There's only one bar per week. So do we have this push above this trend line from the 2021 low here, right here, excluding the shadows from 2022? Told you it was pointing up to this area. We've tried to clear it here. But how do we close the week out? The week is still young. Do we reverse off of the trend line here? Then that would be bearish, giving us a possible pullback or reversal. Or do we clear this area? Do we clear this area and attempt to go up to the upper channel line here in the weekly time frame with our log scaling here? So I'm watching this closely. How do we close? Do we close strong? Do we close weak? The bulls are still in power. My signals with momentum and the trend in the weekly time frame, they're still bullish. The signals are still bullish, but how do we close the week out? As I've said, I think you could reach this upper boundary with the log scaling here in the weekly time frame. Now, maybe we pull back, maybe it's close but no cigar, but my guess is you're going to end up, in all likelihood, reaching this upper channel. If we did that immediately, if we did that immediately, we'd move towards that 115,000 area. If we took our time doing it over a couple of weeks over the holidays and maybe on into January, then we're looking at maybe as high as 120 to 122,000 or so, somewhere in there, depending on when we come into contact with that upper channel line. And this is a parallel boundary. Here I've connected this low, I've excluded the shadow here, and then again, with this level here, I've connected that to the peak here, including excluding the shadow, and directly overhead is that upper channel line, which again be somewhere around 115 to as much as 122,000, depending on when we reach it. Are forming massive divergences right now in the weekly time frame, but maybe they're not done yet. Maybe we go up into this level and complete that. So just some things to consider, some things to ponder. And we got that 13 count. Do we complete a 9 count? Do we close strong? Do we close weak in the weekly time frame here? Do we blow past the trend line from the 2020 low as we saw a moment ago? Or do we get rejection at it and start turning down? So we'll be watching. But I think you got a really good shot. We're going to come up here. Now, tomorrow's a Fed meeting. If we try to rally or if we sell off with the Fed meeting, and then we go into the light trading volume surrounding the holidays. We'll be watching both of these trend lines, the linear and the log here. Again, do we reach this upper channel line? Do we clear the trend line from the 2021 low? Or do we get rejection at it? We'll be watching to see how we close the week out. Do we close strong? Do we close weak? Fed meeting tomorrow. The Fed is expected to cut tomorrow, but then they're expected to pause come January. Now, I'm telling you, if they do that, that would be a huge mistake. We're about to move into recession. Recession is probably less than 6 months away now. Just be a couple of months away. The Fed is going to be blindsided, just like they were blindsided by the inflation. They were extremely dovish going into 2021 and 2022 when they should have been extremely hawkish of the inflation that they kept telling us was transitory. Now they're hawkish. They're saying, oh, they've started cutting, but the Fed's saying, well, there's no rush to cut. There's no hurry, Powell's saying. Good place, and they kind of, they're still talking about the soft landing nonsense. We're not going to have a soft landing. We're about to move into recession. We got more recession warning signals recently. Bitcoin is going to price in a recession. Now, again, it's either going to stall at this trend line or it's going to go up to that upper channel and stall, probably complete a blow off top. Parabolic rise that we've had off of 52,000. People keep saying, oh, we're going to have this long bull market that's going to go into 2025 and 2026, and 2025 is probably going to be a very bad year for Bitcoin. 2025, we're going to have a recession. Bitcoin has never seen a legitimate recession. I mean, we had one that they wouldn't let happen because they threw all the stimulus at it. We're going to have one now in 2025, and we don't know how much that's going to impact Bitcoin. It's probably going to crush Bitcoin. It's probably going to cause it to completely collapse. We've never had Bitcoin in its existence go through a period where we've gone through a real recession. We had an extremely brief period of a recession. They threw stimulus and everything but the kitchen sink at it to have a legitimate recession this time, and it's going to be bad. And Bitcoin's never gone through that. So people telling us, oh, we're going to have this bull market forever, in 2025 and 2026, and you're getting these targets of, again, 350,000, 500,000, 700,000, a million. And these people are not factoring in the fact that we are going to have a recession. They don't believe we're going to have a recession. Again, the narrative is that we're getting a soft landing out of the Fed, which is not going to be the case. Keep that in mind. And we'll be watching the upper boundary of the channel here, and we'll be watching the one we're reaching right now with our linear scaling. What happens with the Fed? We'll see what happens with our topping tail from Tuesday. Is it confirmed or not? We'll be watching the 13 count, the 9 count there in the daily time frame as well. Signals remain bullish in the daily time frame and the weekly time frame as we're hitting that resistance level. So I wanted to cover that in this video, and then we'll be watching what happens with the Fed, and we'll be looking at our indicators to see if anything has changed. Right now, everything remains bullish. Now, as I'm wrapping up the video here, Bitcoin is down early on here in the Wednesday session, down almost 1%, 0.90 as I've been making the video. It's been going down. Get a reaction off that trend line. Do we get a reversal off of it? Do we get a mild pullback, a major pullback? Or do we just pull back slightly and plow through it? Or does this go away and we end up rallying with the Fed and clear that trend line of resistance? I'll be watching how the market performs tomorrow with the Fed and what happens at that trend line of resistance with the linear scaling on our weekly chart. About 1% as I'm closing the video out here.